Before they can react to Storm's shrieks, Juggernaut charges into them, asking who among them thinks they can stop him. Sean wonders that himself as he heads towards his cousin, Black Tom, while thinking of how they let their guards down for the vacation. Tom isn't worried though, as he knows Juggernaut is stronger than anyone there, and he himself is immune to Banshee's sonic screams, and Banshee notes with reluctance that he's right, as it was only Jean and the Professor that beat Juggernaut before. Diving forward, Sean attacks with the only weapon he can, his fists. As the others tussle with Kane, Colossus turns to Aurora, asking what's wrong as she's lost in her panic. Wolverine yells at him, wanting to know what he's doing and that he needs to forget Storm as they need his help. Peter warns Wolverine though, and the Canadian grabs hold of Colossus's arm and, finished trying to persuade him, throws the Russian headlong into the Juggernaut. Furious that Wolverine did that, he threatens him not to come between him and his friends, as Wolverine says he'll fight any time when a voice tells him that it'll be now. Juggernaut, coming up behind him, knocks Colossus into the wall, yelling that the others have already learned not to turn their backs on him, as he can't be stopped at all. Wolverine steps up though, confident he can win as he strikes out with his adamantium claws. As he's knocked back though, Kurt sees it didn't slow him down and that only Storm might be able to stop him, as he tries to get her to come out of her sobbing, yelling at her that they're being murdered. He then hears Kane behind him and, turning, narrowly manages to dodge a mighty punch as it lands in the wall behind him. Antagonizing the villain, he draws him away from the others, knowing they can't outfight him and that they must outthink him. Instead of following though, Juggernaut turns to the helpless Storm, grabbing her and intending to end her life, when Nightcrawler teleports behind him, warning that if he does, he'll find out how demonic he really is. Tossing her away, Kane eagerly returns to fight him as Storm curses herself of how useless she is and can't help them, as she begins recalling the source of her misery, starting in New York back in 1951. Her parents were leaving their home when she was merely 6 months old, returning to Cairo, as they marvel of how their baby is special and seems to understand all their words. Jumping forward 5 years, Cairo is caught up in the Suez War. As the aircraft bomb the highway, Aurora's father, David, urges his wife to leave with him as the attacks come close to their home, and that he'll leave them at the American embassy. However, one of the aircraft is struck and the pilot is forced to bail out, leaving his ship to fly alone and full of bombs. David sees it flying towards them and yells for his wife and daughter to brace themselves as it crashes headlong into their home. Aurora, awakening to the debris surrounding her completely, finds herself in pain as she sees the body of her lifeless mother close to her. Blacking out, she reawakens later. Her mother's body is gone and she manages to free herself from the rubble. Roaming the streets, she's eventually taken in by Ahmed El-Gabar, who taught her to be one of the best thieves in all of Cairo. Years later, when she turned 12, she began to feel drawn to the south, and after walking for a year, found herself in the Serengeti Plains, where she finally felt at home. Eventually, she met Charles, who convinced her to join the X-Men. Back in the present, Xavier feels the call of Aurora, and tuning into the telepathic connection he has with his students, feels her fear and learns of his brother's appearance. Hurrying into Jean's room, he motions to Scott to join him as it's urgent, when Jean introduces her new roommate, Misty Knight. Brushing Misty off, he takes Scott outside to explain what's going on, as Jean apologizes to her friend. Misty, knowing something's eating at Jean, asks what's wrong. Turning somber, Jean asks how she'd feel if she died and brought herself back to life. Out in the hall, the professor tells Scott that he must go to Ireland to help the others, but he refuses, not wanting to leave Jean until she's better. Shocked at the fact that Scott is ignoring the plight of his teammates, the young leader turns and tells him that he can't get there in time to make a difference, and that Charles himself said they must learn to fight on their own eventually. Angered at the callousness of Scott, Xavier begins to go off on him when he's suddenly cut off. He feels the images bombarding his mind again as, looking in the mirror, he once again sees the face that's been haunting him. Back in Cassidy Keep, Juggernaut is still fighting as Kurt narrowly dodges another attack. Grabbing for a beam, he notes that the harder Juggernaut is struck, the less he feels, as he laments Storm's claustrophobia, as she might be able to stop him. Down below, Wolverine continues slashing but is backhanded and stunned while Nightcrawler calls out to him. Grabbing a torch, Nightcrawler hopes to delay the fatal blow Kane means to deliver as he leaps down and tosses the fire into the villain's face. Juggernaut cries out in pain as Black Tom, seeing this, lifts his cane and releases a blast into Kurt's back while telling Sean that though they're immune to each other's powers, Nightcrawler isn't, as he lands hard on the floor and doesn't move at all. A part of the wall slides open as a group of mysterious individuals, seeing Kurt unconscious, note how he's partly invisible in the shadows and pull him through the opening, though no one notices. Back with Tom, he mocks Sean for losing his edge to his confusion as he continues grinning on how he's not asked anything such as who freed the two villains from prison or allowed them to control the keep, of who paid them to kill the X-Men. Striking down his cousin, Tom explains that their sudden appearance forced them to move quicker than planned, but that it worked out and that they'll be rich. Kane, though, won't stop until his brother's defeated and dead when someone shouts that it'll never happen. Turning, he finds Colossus barreling into him, saying that he must first defeat him and that he won't be beaten. Warning him to stay down, Juggernaut throws him back, yelling that he'll get back up no matter how many times he's knocked down. However, Peter jumps forward, landing a kick to send the villain back into the wall. The resulting damage causes it to collapse, burying the Russian to Storm's horror when the debris is sent flying outwards. Marco walks back in, grudgingly respecting and carrying an unconscious Peter, who upon seeing this, Aurora attempts to control her fear as she calls out to the villain, who is unimpressed at her attack. As the attack flies forward, Kane easily deflects it back towards her and she falls unconscious as well. Victorious over the heroes, Juggernaut tells Black Tom about the rapport Charles shares with his students and that if they hurt them enough, he'll come himself to try to rescue them.